Chaudhary, the CEO of Atlantic Society. We're a business networking platform and an investment club. And what we do is we aim to work with university students, entrepreneurship centers, innovation labs, incubators, and accelerators at various universities to align them with what goes on in the real world when it comes to investment, innovation, and entrepreneurship. A lot of the times, campus life is siloed. So what we do is we create a bridge between both the academia and your campus life and investors, innovators, other very accomplished individuals in your respective fields in the outside world. And it's so important to have this, because from a very young age, then you should be able to connect with mentors, investors, and kind of start building that network, which is very crucial. You can never rely on building a network when you need it. So even your investors, you should never start looking for investors when you need them. You should actually have an investor built-in database much before you start even raising. So today, what we're going to be covering are the ABCs of raising capital. We're just going to go over some of the fundamentals, considering the last session we just discussed ideation and validation of your idea. So this is a real good build on post your bootcamp. And I'd like this to be a very informal discussion as opposed to it being like a webinar where we're just talking through points. I'd rather this be a very conversational, hands-on, and very tactile webinar where we're addressing your actual concerns currently. So to kick it off, our first topic is Introduction to Fundraising, exploring the significance of raising capital for startups and gain a comprehensive understanding of various funding options available. Without sounding too textbooky about this, I think the very foremost thing I have to say to anyone who listens to me is decide whether or not you even need capital. It's an obligation, not a necessity. And it's more of an obligation to a certain extent if you're raising it with family and friends. But if you actually have a great idea, you can persevere and have that resilience and grit that we talked about the last time. I would just focus on bootstrapping initially until your product market fit, your actual product testing, any of the stress tests that you conduct have been completely vouched for. Anything prior to that, given how competitive the landscape is now, both on the entrepreneurial side and the investment side, and especially given the current economic situations, it's not the ideal time to be raising outside money. And sorry to be the biggest doom and gloom about this, but it's just the way it is, because it's very, very competitive. So if you are starting something now, I would wait until you have an entire customer profile down, the idea is validated, you've got a product and a market fit that is established and successful. Only then go outside and raise capital. And that could be through angels that are not part of your network, or that could also be VCs. What excludes from this is really kind of raising capital within your own network. I think family and friends is always really good. They come in so early that they're kind of already aware of the risks, and especially the risks of failure. And I say that in a most encouraging way, not in a negative way. There's just no other way to promote products and innovation otherwise. So it's really, really important to have that. The reason I say is wait until you raise external money is because you need to have that pitch down packed. And the only times sometimes that you really, really kind of have that down packed is when you have your idea, customer, and product validated in the outside world. Not on paper, but by real legitimate people. Again, I come back to the current economic times. A lot of the times now what we're seeing, even people, a lot of startups now that are doing paid, like pilot programs are now actually paid, which is really, really good to see, because the amount of money that gets put in just to get to that stage is enormous. And it's so stressful for any entrepreneur to kind of like claw that money back from anyone. So if they can get paid pilots, that's a really, really amazing thing. And all you need is one to get majority of your proof of concept to go underway. So that brings me to your pitch. Because we're talking about raising funding, this is only applicable to outside funding. So it should just be when you have a product fit, when you have a customer profile down packed, and also when you have your idea totally validated. So that covers our pitch. Is there anything you struggle when you come back on a pitch? Do you struggle to come up with a 30-second pitch or a minute pitch?
There's like a million things that you'd like to talk about, to be honest, but you only have like 1 minute to chat.
If that, right? Because what you want to do, and this is something I did as well. So all my business cards, I have maximum 2 sentences. You can only imagine what the standard business card is, what you could fit. I've got my pitch right on there.
Can we see one?
Any of the companies that I advise, anyone that we work with, that's what we say. Because if you can't get that on, it's extremely, extremely difficult. Because if you can't explain your product in that much, that means it's too complicated and you need to simplify this further. A solution, because the thing is, oftentimes the problems are not complex. If I have a problem about something, I can articulate that in a sentence very clearly. But as a winning startup or founder, can you articulate that solution in that simplified manner, right? When we talk to founders, you shouldn't be addressing 1, 2, 3, 4 different solutions to one problem. One problem should have one solution. It's not until you actually have all of your products, your solutions, everything validated that you move in and add more layers to it. But initially, there should just be one thing. Like when we started the Atlantic Society, our university arm, what were we doing? All we want to do is connect academia with the real world. That's it. That's our solution, because that lacks right now. Academia are so focused in their research on campus. Like I have worked with so many different universities where they have given up their IP and given up, products that come out of their spinouts from universities and stuff at peanut prices, like literally peanut prices. And I'm just amazed. And it's not because they don't know how to do valuations or, they just can't be bothered because they're so in their cocoon of university life. And it's a good thing because listen, like on the flip side, we work with startups that need innovation and technology that are only offered by universities. So it's this symbiotic relationship that we have to explore, but no one is doing that on a platform, on a tech basis, right? So that is something that we're offering, and it's an easy problem and then there's an easy solution. And the reason I know, and Hannah, you asked me what's an example. This is it. So for us, it's really easy to kind of do this. We have so many different university partnerships now. We're working with so many different entrepreneurship centers, innovation labs, incubator accelerators, working with founders like yourselves. And we become like the very first step when you graduate from university as a landing spot instead of trade organizations and stuff. So if you come to me, Jacob or Nicola, in 3 months, for example, and you want to join as a regular member for the Atlantic Society, you already have a network of accountants, of lawyers, of innovators, of exited founders, of investors at all levels, right? And that is key to any success story. It is key because through these people and this network, you'll find mentors, you'll find people guiding you, you'll find your sales channels, you'll find your sales leads, you'll find everything that's needed for you to succeed and move on to the next step. And that's what I wanted to create. And that's a problem and a solution, right? So I hope that makes sense. And in terms of identifying your target investors, right? What you really, really need to know, first of all, is what your proposition is. And your proposition comes from knowing at what stage of the business you're in. Let me give you some examples. Do you want just money? Or do you want smart money? I've seen so many founders just take money if it comes their way. And then, they have all these conflicts with their investors. It's a marriage. And, you have to date, you have to get to know one another. And it's an interview process. As much as you want the money, I think it's more of an interview process for the founder to see who they want to bring on board. This is your baby. Would you hand over your baby to any stranger that comes along? You wouldn't, right? And this is exactly it. So it's really, really important to actually understand that. And it's more important, I feel, for a founder, because listen, at the, initial stages, say the first 2 years of a startup's life up until you are, I'd say like maybe pre-seed to seed, first 2 to 3 years of your startup, you've just got an angel round in. But even through your entire journey, you'll have a finite number of investors, even when you go to your institutional rounds. But look at these investors, look at the opportunities that are out there and the number of startups that they could be investing in. So what I'm trying to say is that they've got a plethora of choices. You have a finite number that need to make a difference, and you need to make that count. So I think your strategy really depends on your proposition and how you choose people. It's a real art. Like we conduct interviews for startups to see who they should be targeting as investors. And you need an actual target list that you need to go through. What is most important right now is to discuss different types of funding. You've got the very, very early stage. You've got your own money, your own self-investment. Then you've got your family and friends round. Then you've got an external angel investors round. And then you've got early stage VCs potentially, which could also happen with the angel investors round. Once that happens, it basically is just more later stage VCs. And then we've got private equities potential, or it's just more VC rounds. Usually the VC rounds last from about Series A to about Series C. What tends to happen at those later stages is that more later stage VCs come in, potentially BC rounds. But what they'll also do is they'll also re-up their investments. So they're going to double down on their investments because they want to make sure that the money they've already put in at much higher valuation gets some sort of a return. This is a great time for angels or even family and friends. Hopefully you reach that stage to get an exit, because they're going to have to buy out those guys. So it's really, really important to know this, right? Like, these are the stages that we're working in. But bigger than this is, do you even want an investment? We had a phenomenal panel discussion. All it talks about are advantages of angel investing versus venture capital funding. And it is so important to actually know this. You'll find a VC, an angel investor, startup founder who has raised 10 million, another startup founder who has recently closed her private equity round, and the fifth one is someone who has decided not to raise any external funding except for her initial family and friends. So you will see all perspectives that I've just covered. Everything from just bootstrapping with an initial family and friends all the way to private equity. And it's a great perspective to actually learn about something like this and why people, what are their motivating factors? What are their decision-making factors? It's a subjective, lonely journey, and to each their own, because I think everyone has just specific plans. Back in December, I was at an event where I was a judge at a pitch event. And I met a woman there. Since then, she's been quite focused on chasing me to invest money. And I was like, nope. And I don't know if I shared this story the last time, but she basically, and this is what I'm saying, the motivating factors, right? Like, she basically tells me that she wants to buy the flat downstairs and needs 50,000. And I was like, well, why do you want to buy the flat downstairs? Because at 50,000, I'm thinking I could go buy the flat. Why would I give you the money? It was in foreclosure at Peak District. I'll just Airbnb it. And, so she's like, because I'm a startup founder, she's a PhD student, actually. So she's really, really smart. But again, she doesn't really know how the outside world works. And, bless her, she was so honest and genuine. But I was just like, please don't open your mouth in public like this, because she basically asked me for 50 grand and said she wants that money so she could buy the flat downstairs, and it would prevent her from having neighbors where she could get distracted from her innovations. And as a potential investor, I should have vested interest in her mental health. And I was like, huh? And I was like, I really love the spin you've put on this, but no, I would rather go invest my money in someone who's already got the grit and resilience to withstand all these things. And someone who is not putting their hand out, and someone who's willing to put their own money in, their own time in, effort in, everything, because it shows you're not just after a quick, easy buck, and you have skin in the game. And you need to show that you have skin in the game. Capital is out there, and there's lots of it. Contrary to what people say, there's a lot of capital out there. However, people are being much more selective now on how they deploy that. And that's why I think it's really, really important. As much as it is for the investor, it is also more important, I think the onus lies more on the founder to figure out who the right investor is for them, and at what stage they should be raising what round. And I think it all comes down to the founder when it comes to that. So this comes down to our next point, which is identifying those right investors. So I'm going to reiterate this, that it really depends on what stage you're at in your business. Initially, you put in your own money to kind of put up a website, set up your company, get the loose framework of a product going. Then you might bring in family and friends that are helping you develop a prototype potentially, and really kind of give you the resources to get out there and develop a network. You plod along like this, and this is the lonely, very kind of, I don't even know what the right word is, but like a really economically restrained journey, because it's very, very difficult. It's very, very difficult to survive that. And those 2-3 years are just so difficult. But if you can survive that, and you actually have a really good solid point where you have established a product and market fit, I think it's the ideal time for you to raise money from external angels. A lot of these angels, like myself included, I'm an LP in a venture capital fund out of Silicon Valley. We straddle both lines. So I'm an angel investor investor, but I'm also a VC. So it's really, really important to have this contact base, because you're going to find people with so many different hats on that open up an entire world that you didn't have at your disposal. But what I don't like doing is people wasting my time when they don't actually have any skin in the game, or they don't actually have any product market fit. I don't like that. There are other investors also, because when I invest, then I'll write a $30,000, $40,000 check. And there are other investors that'll come much earlier on and they just write 5,000. But the amount of effort that you're going to make asking someone for money, whether it's 5 or 30, is exactly the same. And the other thing I see a lot of people is that they don't raise enough money. Like, so many people have these grand ideas, and remember, it's better to raise money earlier on and have surplus in the bank, because you're raising it at a much lower valuation. So when you sell, there's a real massive return on the investment for anyone involved, including yourself, because you're the majority. At the end of the day, what you really need to kind of suss out is how much do you need, and that is a real art. Like, I've got people, like the other day I had a person pitching 100,000 at my pitch event. I was like, you have a room full of 70 really credible investors. Why are you raising 100? For them to write a check of 100 versus 200 is really not a big deal. So why would you do something like that? Because given, again, I'm coming back to what the next 1 year looks like with rising interest rates, loans are out. We're sitting at what, 5 or 6%. So loans are out. Given this, everyone is, like, even to anyone coming up for remortgaging their or refinancing their mortgages, blah, 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 whatever it is, inflation, everyone is in a cash crunch right now. So the investors also don't want to part with money so easily. So when you have the opportunity, why wouldn't you have extra in your bank now and have a longer runway? Because if you run out in 6 months, it's Christmas time. No one invests. You pretty much have like a lull from mid-November onwards till mid-January. Those 2 months are totally waste. And so many people actually don't see 1 year ahead as to what that 1 year is looking like. It takes a lot of micro and macroeconomic research to get there. And, we have clients that, or we have some startups, the clients that sign with us, we don't actually have to convince them, but the startups sometimes that come to us and they're like, well, your fees are too high. And I was like, yeah, because we look at every single scenario as to what can go wrong and how you'll just completely end up without any cash, because they just don't have the experience to do it. Everything is just instant gratification and a short-term view. What you need to be looking at is a long view here. And I think that's really important in not only just identifying targets, but also deciding how much you want to raise. Like I said, raise more at lower valuations. So it at least takes you to the institutional rounds without any issues, because that's the hardest to raise. Up until then, it's the hardest raise. You've got sometimes even like the SEIS up to 150, but more recently up to 250 are relatively easier. But the minute you get to the EIS side, right, like sort of 500, 800 to up to 1.52 million, gets incredibly tough. It's like a barren desert. Like, it's like nobody is touching this space. And I wonder how much of, university students realize that. But this is what's happening in the real world right now. Like, nobody is touching this space because the risks are higher. The valuations are higher that they're coming in at. And the VCs are kind of stepping away from this space. And angel investors really don't have that kind of money to be putting down as an angel investment. No one's going to, not one person's going to come in and sign a 500 or 700,000 pound check. That's usually institutional. So, you kind of have to like assess all of these factors that are playing for you and against you. Any questions thus far?
Other than the fact that talking about actually asking anybody for £500,000 for a business that I might start seems utterly fanciful.
What?
so far away from it's just like this is. Yeah, I the beginnings of you've got your own skin in the game. You think you've got an idea. You're building something. You're kind of convinced in yourself, in your heart, that you have a product and there is a market, and you need to tie that together. I'm there. Potentially building that up. Sorry, can you hear me? Okay, or is my microphone dodgy?
Yeah.
Building that up
better,
to the. Oh, good. Where you might have more evidence of that, rather than it being a gut feeling, that you've actually gone out there and gathered evidence of, be it in a survey or however, and you then say, actually, yes, there is a market for this thing, and down with that. And then even running that for a little bit and being able to sort of almost self-fund or family fund and friends fund, yes, having somebody put in, 100,000 again, that's that's okay, but that's still big. Okay, my little world, that's still very big money. But then thinking that whatever it is that you've created might go on to be something that is so much bigger. It's like, oh, now we've yeah, I don't know. It's madness. I know these are numbers that you deal with and these concepts. It really does just show to me how novice and naive and innocent my little world is, and how I'm being blown away by this already.
But see, this is exactly what I mean. Like, this is why we need a bridge between academia, students, and the real world. We just recently had one of our members and startups that I'm an investor in. Oh, hi, Tracy. Hi. Thank you so much. I'm going to intro you in like 2 minutes properly.
Okay.
But I was just finishing up a thought with Nicola right now. So, Nicola, we just recently had one of our members and a startup I'm an investor in. An individual put in 500,000, one individual. And he's kind of, and I mean, this is London. Tracy, what are typical angel investments in the US?
It can depend. It can be as low as sometimes, especially because we have an angel investing program, so it can be as low as like $5,000 if you want it to be, or it can be like $500,000 is that's like we would only wish to get that from like an institutional investor. But I mean, like average could be like around like 100,000, or like 10,000 to 100,000 is like the most common range I've heard.
Yeah, but these are individual investors, and that's a common range.
Yeah, no, it's definitely. I haven't heard a lot of that, especially in the U.S.
No,
especially for
500.
founders.
No. What I was saying was 500 was even a stretch for us, but I'm saying that it does happen sometimes, right?
Yes.
And so this individual, it's not institution. He does have an investment arm, but it basically is just him. So he did. I think it's actually a family office, so maybe that's why it was a family office investment. But as you heard, Tracy, like 100, 200,000 in the U.S. is common range. In the U.K., it's a little more typical to be about maximum to 100, and tends to be lower. Like usual, mine are starting around the 25 to 30,000 range for as like an angel. As a syndicate, which has obviously it's a lot larger than that, but it's this. So just wanted to introduce everyone. So Tracy, we're actually having like a little chat. We're hoping more people would join in a bit, but I'm not sure if they will at this point. But basically, we're speaking with the University of Suffolk, and they've just come off a 2-week boot camp. Sorry, Hannah, 3 or 2 weeks? 2 weeks.
2 weeks, right?
Yeah, a 2-week boot camp. Pre-boot camp, we ran a session which was talking about ideation and validation of your product. And what we're talking about right now is the ABCs of fundraising. So what we've covered so far today is me just talking about assessing whether or not you should even raise capital in the first place. And I think that's a really, I think maintaining status quo and just bootstrapping all the way, it's got really good, valid arguments there. And, because like I said, raising capital at earlier stages sometimes is not a necessity, but an obligation. And so you really have to see whether or not that's something that you want to go down. And so we talked about identifying your target list. So whether that is your own investment, to family and friends, to angels, to external, like institutions coming in. And Tracy is a great person to talk more about the VC perspective. Tracy, when you get, I haven't talked about relationship building, like for us, as an angel, sometimes it takes me up to 6 months to actually be able to actually sign the check with someone, because I really need to make sure, like I said, it's like a marriage, and the relationship has to be so harmonious that, it's also our blood, sweat, and tears, the way, how you earn. So to be able to actually put into something is just really important when you do that due diligence and see if it's the right fit. Tracy, could you walk through what kind of not your thesis perhaps at SoGal, but so by the way, Tracy Thompson, VP at SoGal Ventures, with offices in the US and Singapore?
Yeah, we're all remote. We invest across US, Singapore, Canada, Europe. Yeah.
Amazing. Would love to sort of gain some VC perspective to see exactly like what is it that you're looking in a founder. I know you guys come in early stage, and sometimes it could be pre-revenue or pre-product. And sort of, do you guys participate in any venture building? Because I think it's so important when startups are building a target list of investors to know how vested your investor is going to be.
Yeah, and let me know if it's a little bit loud. If not, I can move. But yeah, so in terms of what we look for in a founder, we basically kind of look for three main prongs. We want to look for companies and founders that are global first, design driven, and sustainably minded. So that can mean a lot of things. But in terms of design driven, we want to make sure that our founders are solving the right problem for the right people. So like for a company like Ceremonia, which is a company that creates products for Latinx hair care, for Latinx hair, that was a company that we invested in pre-product, pre-revenue, and she was creating products that were specifically made for Latinx hair, specifically hair that wasn't like kinky and that wasn't straight. And there was, in her opinion, there was nothing in between. There was only, in the beauty industry, historically, there was only straight hair, and then there was only kinky hair, and then there was not a lot in between. And so she was creating a solution for that. And so when we were like looking at that company, it was, A, does this problem really exist for our target market? And really doing a lot of interviews with their consumer and their community. So we really try to understand the founder through understanding their community, and then trying to understand if this founder is the right one to solve the problem for that community, and understanding how much do they care, how much do they invest in the community, and really just like seeing how much the founder like is solving for that. So making sure the founder is able to solve the right problem for the right people is like the first baseline thing that we look at. Then we look for like a level of like global first, and like impact in the founder. So what that means is like a lot of our founders have lived in different companies. They have a lot of different perspectives on just like how business is globally. And it doesn't mean, especially for us, we're trying to invest in diverse and underrepresented founders. Not every founder is going to be able to have lived in 5 countries, and like that's like a high barrier to have. But like, do they have a perspective on just the world and seeing businesses borderless and providing access to customers that don't depend on a specific geography? So like a company called like Inde Wild is a company that creates Ayurvedic skincare for South Asian women, and that founder Deepa really wanted to create a brand that changed standards of beauty for South Asian women globally, and really like used her experiences growing up to like create a better brand for her community, and has like sold out in India in 2.5 hours, is expanding into the UK and the US, and like really sees this impact on a global basis. And then looking at companies that are and founders that are sustainably minded. So are they actually creating a better future and a better planet in their products? So like a company that does that is a company called August in our portfolio that creates organic pads or organic menstrual care, and really is redefining who a menstruator is and just that journey for its customers. And they like had found that I believe it was like 80% of the world's cotton was not produced ethically. And so they went on a hunt to find a new producer and a new supplier of cotton to basically create their products. And then they also recently launched an initiative to basically refund their customers on the tampon tax. So I'm not sure if they have this in the UK, but in different states in the US, they have a tax on tampons. And so they will refund their customers and Venmo them back for that tampon tax. So like looking at those 3 prongs is what we look for in a founder. And I think you had a second question that I may have missed.
No, that's amazing. And you know, this is what we talked about earlier, is knowing your value proposition and kind of going with the flow, because when you start to when you're raising institutional, your value proposition changes so much. But that's why it's really important to kind of go to external funding once you have that product market fit down packed. At least that's my opinion.
No, 100%, because that's like the first thing that I'll look for is like, okay, like sure, like there's one thing in having like a great idea and a great product, but if no one cares or if it's not a real problem, then it's like you just have a great nonprofit. It's like you need to have something that people will buy.
Exactly. And Tracy, one more thing. In terms of elevator pitches, right? How important is it for you to kind of get the idea right away?
It's extremely important, because I think it's like you don't want to like waste the person's time and like have them thinking throughout the entire pitch, like what is this like product doing? And like, so I want to know immediately what you're doing. so that then I can like basically have my questions that I'm like other questions that I'm asking and like just trying to like analyze your business better. It's harder for me when I'm just like confused and I'm like, wait, what is this company doing? And then especially if you're solving like a technical problem, like if you're creating like a med tech device or you're doing something in the legal space, most VCs don't have that experience. And so you really have to do a great job at like breaking it down in a very digestible way. And I think there's a founder that I went to school with that was creating a solution for doctors, and she did such a great job of just breaking down the journey of a doctor as they're just like any other customer, and then like spelling out in like the simplest terms what she was doing. And so it was very easy for me to understand what she was solving, even if I didn't understand the medical terms. Whereas like I got this pitch from a lawyer one time and I was just like confused the whole time. Yep. So it's like making sure that they understand like what you're solving, and that someone who isn't in your field can understand that as well.
And it has to be in like the most layman terms.
Yes.
Because you're talking to people that are not part of that industry. So it's really important to kind of actually have that. And you know, it's funny you talk about problem and solution. I think I said that, you know, that in combination, those two words about 100 times before you logged on. Problem and solution, it's so important. Yeah. And I said, like, I was like, you know, like a problem is very, like you can articulate the problem very well. Sometimes the solution though, like people just, it's so long-winded and there's so many multiple layers that people get lost. So it's really, really important to actually have a very, very simplified solution to something that you can articulate in a very succinct and concise manner. Concise is very, very important. Yeah, because otherwise it's just lost. Especially because, like, you know, I don't know if it's just an occupational hazard, but I think in the investment world, everyone really has like very, very short attention span. Really short attention spans, because on a weekly basis, like not so much now, but I'd probably review maybe 40, 50 pitch decks sometimes. And it's just like at such a fast glance that majority, sometimes it's like 100% saying no to them. How many do you go through a week?
A week? I mean, I was just telling someone, I was like, I have a whole inbox, like a whole folder in my inbox that I need to get to. I mean, at least 20. And that's like the ones that I actually like look at. Like we get over 10,000 deals like inbound as a team a year. But we'll get like 10,000. At least 20. Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, but we'll get at least like I'll look at maybe at least 20 a week. And then I think it's also like we're like very thesis driven, which helps us like better like see like, okay, is this a deal that I'm even gonna look at, or is it just like not in our wheelhouse? And then I think like to your point about like solving the problem, there are like some problems like that consumers have aren't the most profitable ones to be solved. So I think that like Rent the Runway is like a great example of like a great company. But like one of my good friends is like a super user of Rent the Runway, and what they offer for their customers was like this unlimited return subscription, which is like a customer's dream. But for Rent the Runway, it's like one of the most unprofitable parts of their model, because they have to turn over these products constantly. And then so they're basically running an unprofitable dry cleaner. So it's like they're solving a great solution for the customer, but it's like really not profitable for them. So like really figuring out if there's like a problem, like if you're solving the right problem for the right customer, but also is it profitable for you as a company? So that's also what came to mind when you were talking.
That's so true, right? Because we're talking about the product market fit, but is it profitable, or is it just better to throw in the towel? And no, amazing. Amazing. Any questions so far, Nicola?
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure if this is a good question, but if you're pitching to somebody and of course you haven't made any money yet, how can you prove it's profitable or show it could be profitable to the investors?
Tracy, I'll take that from an angel investor perspective, and then maybe you can say that and then you can pitch in from like the VC perspective. From an angel investor perspective, I think it's less so at this stage, because you're more investing in the founder and you're looking at a proof of concept, or you really kind of are passionate about the idea and the possibility of the next step, which you are kind of which you will be more vested into developing. And, you know, I think that's when it's really important to kind of get angels outside of your network to come in and guide you. And listen, if in whoever you're pitching to, hopefully you're not stupid and they can actually recognize that there is an avenue to profitability over here. There is a path to profitability, but the founder might be a little lost. And this is why it's really important to actually get investors on your target list that are outside of your network that can come in, and advisors, and kind of pave that path for you, right? Or they may just come in and be like, listen, I don't think it's a great idea, but you can't make money off of it, so I'm out. But it could be like, okay, actually, this is a great idea. We can make money, but you need to change XYZ. You need to implement ABC, and then we can go on. And then, hopefully you do plot along, and in comes Tracy.
Very cool.
Yeah, I would say that I think a lot of investors, to a detriment, especially in the past, looked at revenues first. Like that's all they wanted to see was like, how can you get to 500 million? And I think like that's still like the first lens that they'll look at. It's like, okay, how can this company even get to, like, can they make enough revenue to exit? And so like one of our portfolio companies did a really good job about doing this in their Series A round, where they basically outlined we need to hit X% of our like B2B customers to hit 100 million. And it was like, this is all we need to hit 100 million. And then they talked about how they were going to use their funds from the round to build machinery, to bring in-house, to make it more capitally efficient. So like, if you can show this is what I need to make revenue, and then this is how I'm going to make it capitally efficient, like showing that you know how to get it to a profitable level, and like the steps that are needed, can help the VC like understand. Sorry, it's very loud. Can help them understand just how how you can become profitable. Just like seeing, basically, like they want, like when VCs, especially in the early stage, are looking at numbers, but they want to see how the founder thinks about it, and like how realistic are they, like how can they plan. And so if you can show that you know how to get to profitability, it's helpful for a VC to know as well. And then like Carrie said, like the VCs will also do their own work to understand, like they've usually invested in a similar company before. They can look at public financials and just like understanding, is this a profitable like sector of business or business model.
Thanks very much. Yeah, that's a lot clearer.
The due diligence process. This one is a little out of my purview, just because we've got due diligence experts. I mean, I do due diligence more for consumer-based companies or anything in supply and manufacturing, anything to do with like the lifestyle luxury sector. So I tend to get, on boards or advisory roles or entrepreneur and investor or entrepreneur in residence, things like that. So I tend to do more focused on these companies and these sectors. But the due diligence actually is a big one, because I think both from you need your tech due diligence, and you also need your financial due diligence. And I think it's always, especially for a startup looking for external funding, better to engage real professionals to do this, to make sure that once you are in those later stages of due diligence, I cannot tell you how many investments we've had to back out of because the later stages of due diligence have been so weak, with the founder not having enough data in their data room, or just not beefed up enough that we could just go in and it's clean enough to actually conduct our diligence in the most efficient way. Tracy, probably a little bit more nuanced on your side.
Yeah, just our due diligence process as a whole. Do you want me to walk through it, or? Yeah, so it's definitely more nuanced, I think. So we do it in a few different ways. So we have like a very long due diligence questionnaire for our founders, and we basically use a Series A like template from a Series A fund, because like our assumption is like we want our companies to get to that level. And so if we're like preparing them at that stage, like at the due diligence stage, at the seed stage, to like basically be prepared for a Series A, then we're already starting them off in a good position. So we use like a Series A DDQ, and we look at just like everything from the founder to the business model to the financials. And then we'll also enlist like a lot of our LPs. So if it's like in the consumer space, we'll enlist our LPs who like have worked in supply chain logistics to help us understand like what are the risks inherent in the company. So like when we were investing in one of our consumer companies, they basically predicted that they were going to have a stability problem with one of their like products, and that came true. So like understanding the risk that could come up, and then also when like we're getting later on in the process, like delving into their financials, like understanding like where are things lying in their balance sheet, like that's almost killed the deal on our end, is like seeing things that weren't like right or didn't like line up in like how they were recording their assets and things like that. So it's a little bit more comprehensive. When there is data at a pre-seed level, it's really just like you're diligencing the founder themselves.
Awesome.
Also, I can move in front of the quieter spot if it's too loud. I just I don't want it to be too distracting. Okay, perfect.
No. I mean, I can hear you fine. I think the others should be fine too. Alternative funding options. This is something that, I've talked about before, whether or not you fund at all, or you go through all the different stages we talked about, which is self-funding, bootstrapping, family and friends, angels, family offices, VCs, which is all institutional, and private equity, beyond. Or, there's also other funding options like grants, crowdfunding, incubators, and accelerators. And I think it's really important to explore all of that. There's so much research and grant money out there, but also for research, right? Like, not sure if you guys know, Tracy, not sure if you know, but I know in the US there's so much of this, but here there's so much R&D grants you get. And it's actually applied retrospectively also. So you don't actually have to apply beforehand. So if you're set up as a company and you have developed a tech, like there's a startup that we're working with right now. So they've got this amazing product. They haven't techified it, but they've gone through like a design company, got a product, got a prototype built. But she didn't know that R&D grants actually exist. And these are from the HMRC. So it's not even a grant. It's just basically like filling out forms. And it's available, like it's not like a grant process that you have to apply. It's just available to anyone who is eligible and qualifies for it. And
the concept of free money.
Correct. And there are companies, so we work with one who basically offers that service to all of our members at no charge. It's only based on success, which is really cool because you're not going to a company, because a lot of the big fours that you would go to typically would charge a lot for this, right? In retainers and monthly fees and blah, blah, blah. Before they even take you on, you're going to have to put down so much money. So we work with this one company. They're Central London located, and they literally, to all of our members, offer this for free, and they only take money on success. But then obviously their vetting process is a lot more stringent. I can't stress enough on how much there is, especially in the UK, depending on different councils also that you're based in, funding to women, funding to underrepresented founders. There's so much money out there. Again, nothing like what you would see in the US, but there's definitely a lot of money, like definitely a lot of money here. Yeah.
There is, yeah. And I would say, I think a lot of people, their first instinct is just like, go get venture funding. And it's like, it's fine to like take your time and like look for all the free money you can, because there's a lot that comes with venture funding that like not everyone needs to go through if they don't need to.
That's what I'm saying. It's an obligation, right? Like, so you really have to kind of think whether or not it's something that you want to actually undertake, because taking money, bootstrapping, taking money from family and friends, you retain control. You are pretty much in the driving seat. You're not led by what your investors are saying. A lot of the times, you hear these horror stories on how a startup founder gets booted out of the business and this and that. And VCs or institutions get vilified, but at the end of the day, it's because they've got targets. Like they're responsible to their own investors, their LPs, and so there's a lot of responsibility, and that's when it becomes an obligation, and where you really have to fulfill all your duties towards the money that you take externally. So really be careful, because it's not free money. It comes with a lot of responsibility. And then, I think the best thing also is to talk to other entrepreneurs who have bootstrapped, who have raised through angels, who have gone through institutional. Speak to as many people as you can to see what their experiences have been like, and speak to as many, if you've spoken to one from each, not enough. It's a very kind of narrow view of what, of all the scenarios that could have played out. So speak to as many people as you can, because I think it will give you a real good view, taking a perspective from other people's lenses to what really can happen.
Yeah, and then when you're I think it's also important to interview your VC as well. Like when you're talking to VCs, they're not only assessing you, you should assess them to see if they're a fit as well.
I mean, this is what I was saying to earlier. It's a marriage, and I before you logged on, I stressed on this so much, because the VCs, investors, have no shortage of deals. But as a startup founder, you might only have a select few of VCs or investors in mind that are a great fit. So in order to go to the next level, what you really need to do is interview them really well, because you really, really need to make sure if this is the journey that you guys can. It is like a marriage. You guys are going to grow together. A startup founder at the startup phase is not the same as a growth, scale up, and beyond stage. you change as a person. Your mindset changes. The people around you, people don't believe this, but the people around you and your circle of friends changes. And, you need to be able to like be really adapt to that. And for that, you need the right people around you. And your investors are the kind of people that you should not be growing out of. Those are my 2 cents on that.
I agree with everything you said.
Hannah, that covers pretty much what we wanted to talk about this subject. Are there specific questions that we have?
Guys, have you got any questions you want to put forward for these two?
I'm struck by the last thing you just said, Kerry, that was agreed with by Tracy about that whole, it's a two-way relationship. Everybody brings something different, and hopefully that then creates something special. But that idea that you don't want to outgrow your investors, that you if you progress to the next stage, how would you know that you were ready for that? Say that myself and Jacob, we've been bootstrapping, we've and now we've got to that point where we think we've got as far as we can, or it's got intense. We're doing and we're delivering, and we have a product, we have a market, we are solving solutions for our customers. What do we look for? How do we know that, say we were talking and we built a good relationship with you guys, but how would we know that you were the right people? I know that's a bit like, I don't know whether that's a fair question, but that's
a fair
what
question. Like I said, it's a marriage, right? Like, how do you know you're marrying the right guy or girl? How do you know you're marrying the right person? Let's just say that. You date, you get to know one another, perhaps before really kind of solidifying that relationship, get them on as a consultant if you can afford to, or get them on as an advisor, whatever it is, get to know them over a period of time, and see if they're really kind of in it and willing to work with you on a lot of different issues. And I mean, like I was saying earlier, for me to sign a check to any founder, it takes me a good 6 months, if not longer. But again, like for each startup that I'm coming on individually, I'm signing checks around the 30,000 pound mark. So for me, I have to be really, really careful where I'm putting that kind of money, because if I don't want to put that kind of money, but I found someone that it's really, really like I'm compatible with, I really like, then that 30 goes to 50 or 60 sometimes, and I might forego someone I would have invested 30 in, and instead I would just go into this person with 50 or 60. Or if I really, really like something, I might share it with a friend of mine if they want to come in, and then we pool together and we go in a lot higher. So it really, really just depends. And this is why it's very important to build a relationship with investors way before raising funds, because it gives you the time, and time is that luxury when you really need to raise money and you don't have that runway. Time is that luxury that you're never going to get back. That's why have all your investors lined up. You have a target list, and you have this is who you want to basically speak to at the angel round, and this is who you want to speak to, or let's say pre-seed round or seed round, seed plus, series A, and identify these, and every few months or every couple of months refresh that list to see who actually fits in better there. That's how I would go about doing this, because I think that relationship is so important in knowing beforehand, and it affords you the time to get to know them, and it's also keeping them in the loop. So I love getting updates from certain investments that I've passed on. I love getting updates from once in a while to see what they're doing, because like if I skipped on one round, maybe I'll come in on the next. So I love knowing that, and it's, again, that's also relationship, right? The one thing that I have learned: ask for money, you'll get advice. Ask for advice and you'll get money. It's also song. What lyrics to the song were they? Like,
I don't know.
Oh, it's like it's actually like a song. But yeah, no, that's what I would say. Tracy, anything to add there?
I would say first figure out what you need. I think that will help guide what investor is right for you, and then what you need is different at each stage. So it's if you need a lot of connections to anyone in distribution, maybe an angel investor who was previously a founder in the space is the best investor for you right now. If all you need is money, maybe a big fund is what you need. If you need as a founder a lot of more emotional day-to-day support, maybe a smaller fund is what you need. If you're a design driven founder, maybe you need a fund that's focused on design. Or if you need branding expertise, maybe you need a fund that's focused on branding for its portfolio companies. So like really start to like prioritizing what you need at the stage of your company that you're at, and then finding the like investors that are like the best fit for like where you are. And then as Carrie said, like continuing, even if investor isn't right for that stage in your life, like or in stage in your business on both ends, for the next round they might be. So like keeping that communication open and not taking it like personally if they say no, because it can be so many factors as to why they say no. It can be like it's just not a fit right now. Maybe they're too concentrated in a sector, or maybe they just like needed more data and we're needing more time. So like not taking it personally and like continuing the conversation even if they're not a fit at that like current moment.
Exactly.
Investor says if it's a no from an investor first time around, how long would you leave it until you reapproach them or update them or
Right away.
go for it
Just-
again right away?
Just ask them, is it okay if I keep you posted on our updates? And then maybe, wait a couple of weeks and always follow up. Like the number of times that, I've said no to someone and they just disappear. And I was like, okay, well, they don't even like thank you for your time. And I was like, okay, well, then that's fine. And, like these are like having this etiquette. There is a professional etiquette in place that people tend to forget sometimes. But on the other side, you remember this.
Because in the world of business, a no's a maybe and maybe sometimes a yes.
Yeah. And, it really just depends. How many times have you said no, but the founder has been so persistent, has been so charming, and actually has gone back, taken your feedback and come back, and then you say yes.
I'd also say like VCs, like money isn't the only thing that VCs give. Like you can still get on a call with VC and they can help you like with connecting you with another founder that's in the same space as you. They can help you with like there's so many other things that a VC can do for you, even if it's not giving you money at that specific moment. So to Carrie's
Tracy,
point,
I have something to say on that though. I've only noticed that with American VCs. I haven't noticed that.
Oh, interesting. Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I've never it's been very, very difficult that way for me to have. It's very, see, the thing is because VCs here have a very godlike complex. They do in the US too, but there's also like, there's so many more analysts and associates over there that everyone, like you'll meet someone out there at an event and everyone has like FOMO as to what the big thing is. And because there's so, strength is in numbers, right? Safety in numbers. So because there's so many here everyone is kind of like condensed in the Mayfair city side. Founders are all over. And I can't even begin to tell you, like in the US, you've got VCs out in Miami, in all over the US, Chicago, New York, California, so many different ones. Here, there's just London.
Seattle.
Yeah, Seattle, of course. Here, you just have London. And imagine all the innovation that's happening up north, looked over. Like there's just
Leeds,
nothing.
Manchester, those kinds of places.
Manchester, there's Leeds, there's York, all the amazing biotech stuff that's
Liverpool.
coming out of there. And like these are really phenomenal. Also, like if you look at South, for example, Cornwall, Exeter, Devon side,
Bristol.
Like such amazing. Bristol is another one, but I think there's a good innovation and accelerator hub in Wales, which is close enough there, right? So, but like if you go outside of London, there's nothing.
Interesting. Okay, well I take back my statement.
No, it's really
so
valid.
Fascinating.
It's really valid, and you know what? This is why organizations like mine thrive. This is why we have 1,200 members. It's because there isn't enough like people out there to provide that. And we're kind of like the conduit, right? Because we've got so many relationships with VCs then. And so, for example, if I had a really amazing founder, I've done a vetting process and due diligence initially. When I go to our family offices and when I go to our VCs, they're immediately looking at my email because they know that A, it's quality. B, we've already done the initial due diligence and all the checks. And that's why I think, having relationship with kind of like the bridges like ours are important. There's a plug for us. Yeah, I hope that answers the question. Hannah, I'm not sure if we're going to need the full 2 hours today.
Do you know what? I was just glimpsing at the time there, and I think you're right. Because it's been quite an intimate session. Yeah, but I think it's been a bit more beneficial for us guys in a way, just because it's been more of a one-to-one.
Yes, correct. Hannah, send me the recording for this. What we'll do is we'll splice this up, we'll clean it up. So anyone who didn't, from your accelerator program, who weren't able to join, you can at least have them review this.
Sure. I'll send over the initial session as well, the first session for you.
Oh yeah,
Once
please
I
do.
track that down. Yeah.
That was a real great primer for the actual panel, and then now.
Okay, yeah, well,
Great.
I'll crack straight on with that. And some brilliant information that's come in there, guys. I've got so many notes. So I'll be looking forward to sharing that with
Plenty of
everyone.
fun.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
But I'll sign off for now, and everyone have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Tracy, for making
Yeah,
Lovely
yourself
to meet you,
one last
Tracy.
one.
available.
Bye.
Of course,
Yes,
thank
been
you.
really good.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.